What's up, everyone? This is Lane from Trend Friend. This is a video about how to set up and use the trend trading indicator. So first off, I want to make sure you guys are all aware that this little pop-up right here, this is talking about the main trend direction. So we have multiple different types of signals that you can see by these crosses, these bigger crosses, small crosses. We also have these label tags. So those are all different types of signals, but we also have these dots for signals and these background coloring for signals. Those are all extra signals, but the main, when it detects a strong trend on the time frames that you have selected, that's when it's going to show the candles colored in orange or blue, which you can change that in the settings if you want. But to be able to see the what I call the master trend on here, you need to turn off your candle coloring on your chart. So if you have these on, it'll still show over top of it, but sometimes it'll, if you're running your mouse over something, it'll kind of like go back and forth. So I would recommend just turning all of these off. The only one you could, if you want, leave borders on, just because sometimes the indicator can have just a slight, like if it's taking a little too long to calculate it on a certain tick, and price could move up or down, then if the indicator is just barely behind, then it won't show the candle in real time. So you could leave on the borders. So that way you don't get that delay and you'll kind of still be able to see the border in the background if that ever happens. But I'm going to go ahead and turn all of those off. And you just get to that by this clicking that gear icon there and going to the symbol and turn all those off. So I recommend doing that so that you can see all of these. When there is no trend, according to the settings that you have selected, then it's going to paint the candles gray. This is a great way to help keep you out of ranging markets. If you're an over trader, if you struggle with that, then this will also help you to make sure that you're waiting on a trend to be established. So let's run through some of the settings here. One of this other pop-up here is saying make sure to keep all 5 time frames in order from the first time frame to the highest time frame. So we have time frame 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Just make sure whatever you set these to, let's say you have 15 here, then you need 60 here, and then 240 here, and then 1 day here. Make sure you keep them all in order and have each one to be one time frame higher than the previous one, even if you're not using all 5 time frames. So this box here for the first trend of time frame number 5 used for master trend signals, even if those aren't turned on, they do still affect whatever time frames you have set here. They do still affect some of the other signals. So make sure you keep these in order. So we do have the master trend, which, like I said, is going to be the candle coloring. That's going to show up as the candle coloring, let you know that there's a trend. And then from there, we're also going to have other signals, which are down here. And I'll go over those here in a second. But just so you're aware, you need to set this to whatever type of market you're trading. If you're trading futures or Forex, that's 23 hours a day, 5 days a week. We have specific calculations based off of how many candles there are per day, per week, stuff like that. So make sure that you're setting this to the correct, like crypto is 24 hours a day, stocks are only like 6.5 hours a day. So just make sure you're setting that to the correct setting compared to whatever you're trading. Here you can turn on and off the candle coloring. I personally would leave that on because that's going to show you the master trend like I was saying earlier. But if you want to change those colors, you can do all that right here. This setting right here is enabled by default. So the signal is only allowed in directions of time frame 4 and 5. So those are going to be your highest time frames. And you can see here down at the bottom, these are going to be the overall. So we have the monthly and weekly are time frames 4 and 5. So since these are red across this entire thing, you're not going to get any uptrend signals when you have that setting enabled. Now, if we turn that back off, this is also a great way to make sure that you're only trading against the overall, or excuse me, with the overall long-term trend. If you turn that off, then you can see we start to get an uptrend here, even though we are still overall bearish on the weekly and monthly. So that's just one thing that can help you make sure that you're only trading in the direction of the overall long-term trend. So here we have, by default, you're going to have timeframes 1 and 2 turned on for the master trend signals. So you can set these to whatever you want. You can also, if any of these you forget about, we do have tooltips next to everything that will explain each one of these settings. So if you just hover over your mouse over the eye icon right here, then that'll explain everything to you. But you just set these from the lowest time frame first. I would recommend using, the lowest time, whatever time frames that you want to use. So if you're like a day trader and you're trading the 1 minute chart, probably do the 15 and the 60 and the 240, or just the 60 and the 240, which those are minutes. So that's going to be 1 hour and 4 hour. Set these first ones to be the ones that you want to use if you don't want to use all of the long-term ones as well. So go through there and check those for whatever you want. If these are all going to, so the master trend is what affects everything else. If there is no master trend, then we can't have any of the other signals as well. And that's going to be affected by this first checkbox of each time frame. Trend of time frame number 1, 2, 3 used for master trend signals. So whichever ones of those are on, those are going to be the ones that have to be in a trend for any other signals to come through. So that's basically your overall control of the entire thing. So if you're intraday trading, I recommend the 60 and the 240. You can add the daily on there if you want, but you just won't get as many signals. If you add the weekly and monthly, you won't get as many signals as well. But then you'll only get signals that are with the long-term overall trend. So it's up to you how you want to set those up, but just make sure that you understand that these control everything. This second box for all these time frames show trend strength score in the bottom panel. So that's going to be these down here. It's going to show each different row with an overall, bullish or bearish score that paints it across here. But it also gives you the score over here and tells you what time frame it is as well. And it's got these little label tags. And if something is ranging and not necessarily with a strong trend yet, then it's going to show as gray and have a little weight symbol next to it. So like all across here, this was gray as well. That's just letting you know that on that time frame, it's not necessarily in a strong trend. So you may want to wait for that. But that's why I like using the 60 and 240, because then you still get those intraday trends without, instead of missing, stuff like this and this. So that's that part. We also have 3 ranging market filters. So basically, you can set these up. If I were to turn this on, this and say, if I set this time frame 1, 2, or 3, which are the ones that you have up here, if this is on and the market is ranging on that time frame, then it's going to prevent any signals from coming in. So this is another great way to keep from trading in sideways markets and help you stay out of that stuff. And you can set this for up to 3 separate time frames if you would like. These are all off by default so that it catches trends earlier, but feel free to customize these, play around with them, and just understand that this is based using whatever time frames you have set up here. So next is going to be the strong buy-sell signal settings, which are the crosses on the chart. So that would be these guys right here. So there's going to be 3 different levels of these crosses. You can see small one, medium one, large one. And these are basically just telling you that there is a strong trend detected. Again, you can hover your mouse over here to read through everything if you forget. But these are just typically high probability entries in the direction of the master trend. So the bigger the cross is, the more likely it is to give us a good push in that direction. Of course, just because something is trending for a little bit doesn't mean it's going to keep trending. So trail your stop losses and, manage your trades effectively. don't just expect these trends to continue on forever just because you got a signal. The next type of signal is pullbacks during strong trends. And these are going to show up as label tags, which would be these tags here. So when we get a pullback and then it starts to push one direction, then those are the kind of signals that we're talking about here with the label tags. So here's another good example of some of those. Those are also really good ones. That's why we kind of put that label tag on there, because typically these are decently safe ones, just because it's a pullback and then it starts to move in the direction. So you're getting a little bit better entry on those. Next is going to be strong all time frame trend signals. This is going to show up as circles and the background color. So there's two different versions of this that we have. And it just means that there's a strong trend on all the time frames that you have selected. So these are going to show up as dots. And that's one different method of calculation that we have. You can see those red dots behind the on top of the candles. So that means in that type of calculation, we have a strong trend. And then we also have the background color here. That means that we are in a strong trend of a separate type of calculation. So the more confluence you have here, the better. And use those to help you stay in trades longer. When the trend hasn't flipped on something, then we want to hold those trades as long as we can. So when you're getting background color and you're getting dots here, along with the master trend candle coloring, hold that position, trail your stop loss, and let it play out as much as you can. Because there are a lot of factors that are lining up for those to happen. And then the last one is the trend strength score signals. That's the background color on the bottom panel. So down here, we're also going to have signals based off of these score calculations that give us these red or green little oscillator scores. If those are a very strong score for each time frame, or each time frame that you have turned on, remember the master trend settings are these time frames 1 through 5 here. So since we only have time frame 1 and 2, then that's what's going to affect all these other ones and those trend scores there. So if I were to turn more of these on, you'll see how it'll affect that. Give it a chance to load here. So that just means that we're in a strong trend on all of these, whereas across here we were not. And so I have the weekly and monthly turned on here, which are still in a red trend. So that's why we did not get any trend over here, because we have those weekly and monthly. Whereas if I were to turn those off, you would get more signals across there. So again, if you want to wait and only get the strongest trends, if you're more of a higher time frame or 15-minute, 1 hour, 4 hour daily trader, then use those higher time frames. Now, let's say you are trading on the daily chart. You're not going to have enough of these to do all of them. And keep them in order. So just set time frame 1 to, let's say, the smallest one that you wanted was the weekly time frame. Then just do weekly, monthly for time frame 2, 3 month for time frame 3, and then yearly for both 4 and 5. There will just be a few different signals that won't come in as much according to time frame 4 and 5, because they kind of have to work in conjunction with each other to give those, but it'll still work fine on all that. So these are some of the recommended settings that I would use. Is just time frame 1 and 2 on the 60 and 240. Keep this off if you don't want to make sure that you're trading in the direction of the long-term trend, because again, you will miss stuff like this when that happens, because overall we are still bearish on the weekly and monthly, but we did have a strong intraday uptrend here, and that's something that you don't always want to miss. So you can see how there was no dots across here at the bottom because we were still reversing. So that's a good indication that, hey, this is a reversal, but we're not in a very strong trend yet. We haven't passed a lot of crucial points for us to consider this a strong trend. But you can see up here is when we started to get the dots, and it really held this very well. So if you were trailing your stop loss through these, those would have been amazing trades, especially if you're getting in on these crosses and then just using these dots to help you understand to hold these positions as long as possible. So those are good ways to use this. Make sure you pay attention to these dots and the background colors. And in my opinion, we named ourselves Trend Friend because trading with the trend is the safest way to trade. In my opinion, everyone has their own style of trading, but I really like this indicator because it helps keep you from overtrading and it helps keep you out of markets that are not aligned and don't have a lot of parameters in the direction that you think it's going to go. So this really helps you to identify that and just stay out of not great trading conditions. You can also, it would never hurt you to be aware of some of these things and look at higher time frame candles, so you can use other indicators for that, like our supply and demand one, and have your highs and lows of the previous daily, weekly, monthly candles. And when you're inside of those, you're typically not going to get the best signals because price hasn't broken out of those higher time frame candles. So if you want to add something like that as well to your chart to help you understand, okay, once we get out here and we're under, say the previous day's low, then we'll most likely have the strongest trends, and then use this on top of that to help you really get into these trades, hold them with conviction. That's a great way to do things. So I would always recommend understanding what's going on the higher time frames as well. So use something like our supply and demand indicator for that, and make sure you have those highs and lows of the previous day and week and month candles on, because they are important levels that'll help you time your entries better. You can see across here we didn't have any dots because these weren't strong trends, and we only have the hourly and 4 hour turned on right here. So it was still going mostly sideways, but due to us surpassing all of this price action, and then we got up a little bit here, it showed a little bit of a trend, but it wasn't great. That's where it also helps to have, say the daily and the weekly on, to help you stay out of stuff like this. If you want to make sure that you just catch those really strong trends, that's another great way to do it. But again, you're not going to get stuff like this when it doesn't match up with the higher time frames. So keep all that in mind. Play with this. Do some back testing. Of course, always back test everything. See what works best for you. If you struggle with over trading, this is a great indicator to help with that. So make sure you're looking at all of it, and just really, again, read those tooltips and the settings. See here, we had a really strong uptrend. We got a lot of labels like these are, and we have the 60-minute to 40-minute, so 4-hour daily and weekly on. These are great settings if you want to make sure that you're only catching strong trends. You can see these signals were excellent. And the dots and the background color were notifying you to hold these positions. So, and they're still getting you out at pretty good positions as well, too. So make sure to go through a bunch of history with this indicator on your other charts and get comfortable with it. Read the tooltips, and feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions on anything. There's not really anything else that we need to go over here except, some coloring, background colors, label colors, stuff like that. That's all pretty self-explanatory though. So again, make sure you just hover your mouse over the icon here if you aren't sure about something, and we have descriptions to help you out there. And then, of course, feel free to reach out to me via private message if you have any questions on anything else. Okay, thanks, guys.